broadcast. Good morning. Roll intro. All right. Good morning and welcome to Hanging with the Hammer. My time on the on YouTube was off by about 12 hours. I will not be there at 9 p.m. tonight. That's just a guarantee. Most likely I'll be in my chair sleeping at that point. Well, let me get my head a little bit better in. I'm doing this from my iPad today, everybody. Hi, Yeet Feet. I see you. I hope you're still there. You were there at a nice early time. I'm sitting behind the drum kit because I thought maybe if I had to demonstrate something, I could. We'll see who shows up. This could be a bust because I promoted it at the wrong time. So who knows if anybody's going to show up today. So let's see what happens. I got a 0. So Hanging with the Hammer's got 0 people at it right now. So we'll just keep that as the truth. I may be starting my drum covers a little bit earlier today. So who knows? So let's see if anybody shows up. Remember, this is a show where your questions make the show. If I don't have questions, I don't have a show. And if I don't have people on the live stream, I don't have a show. So I really balled this one up, didn't I? Putting it at 9 p.m. These are the kinds of things you do when you're got so much going on in your life that you just don't know what to do with yourself. And you miss things. And I missed one of those things this morning until about quarter of, and then quarter of I realized, holy crud, it says 9 p.m. not 9 a.m. So that is my fault, and that was my mistake. So this live stream, I started on at the time I thought it was going to be at, but I can see some of you are not on yet. So I'm not sure what's going to happen here, and this could just be a bust, a complete bust where I'm talking to myself, and this never gets published. But there is the possibility somebody's going to show up. So, hey, looks like somebody did show up. I got one person in here. I'm going to wait for them to come on in, and we'll have a one-on-one discussion. It's almost like a free drum lesson today, depending on how you want to look at it. So I'm trying to use the camera from my iPad near my drums versus sitting at my computer, which is over there. So, hey, welcome. I got a couple more people that just showed up. Hey, when you get on, and please ask a question or please say hi. Darlene Ashley. Hello, Darlene Ashley. Darian Ashley. Sorry, I got to read on an iPad, so my eyesight is not as good as you might think. Hello. Please ask questions. I'm looking for any question to start the day, and then I'll start rambling on, and hopefully we'll get into some other cool discussions today. Last week's show, 2 weeks ago, I had a show with Tate Berkey, and thank you, close enough. I had Tate Berkey on and Chadwick Perry on. Hopefully you guys all got to meet him a little bit, and those of you that jumped on and got to see what was going on. This show is going to be asking questions, and I'm going to bring people on periodically. And probably, depending on how this asking questions thing goes, it may be always scheduling a guest to make sure I have enough people. Mr. Sean Woodley is here today in the house. So good morning, Sean. So anyhow, let's see what questions we have. One of you guys, please ask a question, Darian or Sean. I'd really appreciate it. Or anybody ask a question. I think somebody else just showed up. And that'll get the show started. You know, we'll start with a question and we'll go from there. I set myself up by the drum kit for a reason, so that in case I had to show something, maybe I could try to do that. So, but that's why I got the upper angle too. But anybody got a thought, question, idea? Can you talk about how you set up your hi-hat? Darian, great question. Well, hi-hat setup. First off, the first thing that you got to know how to do is deal with the clutch. Let me see where the camera is. It's over here. So having a good clutch is really important. You want your cymbal to be a little bit loose in the clutch, but not too loose. And that's where this spring tension comes in. This is a Remo hi-hat clutch, which is probably like the industry standard for a lot of people. The reason why it's got a quick release on it, so I can take the thing off like that, just twisting, and the cymbals come off. So see how it looks? It's got this little tooth in it. So that's the first thing. So I put the tooth in, then I put it up, and then there's these little teeth inside it. Here we go. Where's the camera? There it is. See the little teeth? And the little teeth go on, and it locks it in. So that's the first part. I have a little bit of looseness, a little play in the clutch. Now, the other part of the hi-hat is the bottom part. And the bottom part of the hi-hat, there's a screw down here that tilts it up a little bit. And I like to have a little bit of the screw up so that there's a little bit of angle on the hi-hat. All right? So it tilts up a little bit. So when I put my foot on it, it actually, there goes my SM, no, my Sennheiser 421 just fell. So it gives that chick sound. And I like to be able to do those kind of pushes with the hi-hat where I can get the open sound with a little bit of my foot without using a stick, no stick. That hi-hat thing. So, anyhow, that's how I set mine up. It has a little bit of play in it. That's great. I see a couple more people showed up. Hi, Jim. Flies too. How are you today? Tay Berkey, good morning. Chadwick Perry, guys, thank you for showing up. So, but anyhow, I think that's what you're looking for, Darian, like how you set up your hi-hat. It's at a height where I have enough space between my stick. And let's see if I can get this to pop down a little bit now. Camera adjustments. Wish I had more angles like Dave Weckl, but I don't. Someday maybe. So I want to have enough space so I can get in between there. So that's the key. Now I don't play it super high. Some guys like it high, and I don't like it super low because I need to have a little bit of space to get my hand. Now, if you're an open-handed player, this becomes irrelevant. That's why you see guys like Simon Phillips have their hi-hats down way low because they're going to have their hand out here and they're not going to be crossing over. So I'm very old school, 45 years in this. So that's kind of what I do. So, yeah, loosening the clutch will definitely help you. Anybody else got a question this morning? Anybody got anything else going on this morning you guys want to talk about or want me to try to talk about? Sip of coffee is good. Hi-hat sounds nice. Yeah, these are Peisty 505 hi-hats, by the way, from 1984. These are actually my brother's hi-hat cymbals. I bought my brother a drum kit my parents bought my brother a drum kit in 1984. I took him to Manny's in New York and we bought a Yamaha Stage series, not the Stage Custom, the Stage with the kind of 5,000 lugs, they used to call them back in the 80s. And his kit was black. And he had an 8 and a 10 and a 12 and a 13, all standard sizes, and a 16 and a 22. And I bought him those hi-hats and a Peisty 404 20-inch ride. And I had those drums for a while because he stopped playing drums. Then all of a sudden, one day I had sold them to a friend, my friend Scott, and he got the hi-hats, and he had them for years. And about 2015 or 14, when I got the Giant Beats, I needed a set of hi-hats before I got the 15 Giant Beats. And I said, I really want those 505s back. And he traded me for some 15-inch Zildjian rock hi-hats that he hated. So thank you, Scott Hazen, for being a friend and giving me my cymbals back, so to speak. So that was kind of cool. Anybody else got a question? Throw questions up. I will definitely take any questions. All right, let's see. Sean said, what's your favorite rudiment to practice? I think if practicing is a concept, Sean, I think we got into this. Sean's taking some lessons with me right now. My favorite practice routine would be singles, doubles, and paradiddles. That's probably what I do, and I've been doing something for a long time. I didn't bring the pad over here. Which I should have the pad here because it'd make it easier to do this. So let's get a little studio tour. This is my junk pile for a second here. You can see all kinds of drums and stuff as I grab a pad. And I'm still talking to you, so this is the other part of my studio. All right, I'll grab a pad. Pad's a good thing to have in this camera shot, I think. All right, let's try this. All right. So my favorite Rudiment pattern thing is, so it's either singles to doubles or I've been doing this since I was like a kid. That's what it really comes down to. And that's why that's my favorite. It's really, if you really want to practice something, and practice, and notice I'm saying practice because I don't practice enough, to be honest. The pad, it's almost lost at my house. I know where it is, but I don't use it very often. I would say the first 12, actually skip 12, go to 13 in stick control is a good starting point for practice. And practice with a metronome, put it on whatever tempo you want to go on, and do all of them straight down 20 times each. That's a great warm up. But mine is, that's the single one, and that's the double one. It's paradiddles, and you can tell I stink at them today. They're not really coming off. But that's what happens on live TV, right? So let's see what else, who we got in here. Any other questions? I love the 404s. Yeah, they are fun, the 404s. They really were a good cymbal. 505s, yes, Jim, you're right. The 505s really were a great cymbal. They were the poor man's 2002 back in the 80s. And then they switched everything. For some reason, they went to the 1000s and the 3000s and 2000s. So it's really crazy. Hey, Laurie Jones from North Wales. Nice to have you. Hey, good morning, Keith Scott. Tay Trong, I'm not going to try your last name. Thank you for watching today. Claus is on. What's usually in your stick bag? That's a good question. I'll get to Tate's next. Tate had a comment. In my stick bag, I always have brushes, a pair of mallets of some type, a set of rods of some type. Now, notice I said of some type because I have a lot of different rods and I have a lot of different mallets and I have a lot of different brushes even. I like wire brushes. These are the Steve Gadd Vic Firths. I just ordered a set of Regal tip brushes. My favorites for years were the Regal brushes, the black Regal brushes that were the standard of the industry forever. And apparently now they're very hard to find. Nobody has them. It seems like Vic Firth and ProMark have come up in the brush department. When I was a kid, you had Ludwig brushes and then you had Regal brushes. And there was no Vic Firth brushes and there were no ProMark brushes even. ProMark made sticks. So that's a long time ago, land far away for some of you. But since Vic Firth got in the market, I bought the Gadd ones about, I don't know, 10 years ago possibly when they first came out, that first year. They got a little bend in them. So that's the brush thing. But I really like the Vic Firth purple ones. Okay. I'm not a big fan of the white ones, even though I have a couple pairs of them that I acquired from a stick bag that was somebody's stick bag. And my friend Dan at DMR, he basically made my snare drums. He basically acquired some equipment. He had a whole stick bag full of mallets and stuff. I made him kind of give it to me. And he did. So that was nice of him. He wasn't going to do anything with it. He had all kinds of Mike Balter marimba mallets and vibraphone mallets. And I was like, you're not going to do anything with all this stuff. Let me have it. And also in there was some white Vic Firth brushes, which are a little too stiff for me. But the old Regal brushes were the ones I used forever. and then I couldn't find them. So I just bought a pair of Regal brushes, but I think they're the Jeff Hamiltons. So we'll see what comes in. But I found a pair of the old ones. They were $46 a pair. I'm like, forget that. I'm not spending $46 on brushes. But good pair of wire brushes is kind of important in the bag. A pair of rods for those situations where you need that rod sound. But I'm not married to the ProMark rods. I mean, you can get the Guitar Center cheap rods. They're going to break. I haven't had a lot of success with the Vic Firth Talawans or anything. I always end up breaking them fast. So I would go the cheaper the rods, the better, or you can make them yourself. Matter of fact, the first time I ever saw rods, I was at my friend's wedding. A guy I worked with, a keyboard player, and his wife brought in a different drummer. I usually worked with him, but this was a friend's wedding, so I couldn't play the gig. And the guy he brought in had a little Ludwig 20-inch bass drum, an 8 and a 10 concert tom, and he had like a 14 floor tom and a snare drum, and he was playing with rods that he made himself. And they were just little dowels. He went at the local, kind of like the Michaels Fine Arts store in town. Before they had Michaels, there was no chain Michaels back in this day. We're talking like 1984. And he took some masking tape and made his own dowels. So you could actually make your own rods. And I saw those before the rods came out. I think guys were starting to do that. It was becoming a big thing. Yes, the purple one is called the Heritage Brush. Thank you, Tate. Let's see what else I missed here. Any recommendations for a good quality snare stand? Let me read Tate's first. Just started going through the 26 standard rudiments every day. Really get them under control. Tate, now's the time to get into the rudiments. When I was in college, I was more on top of that. I mean, especially the Rudiment and the drags and the flam taps and the flam accents. I was like really into that in college. Something happens when kids show up and job shows up and life shows up. And all of a sudden, those kinds of things don't happen that often. But every once in a while, they show up in my playing. I don't know where they come from, but I'll be doing something, and I'll hear myself do the blugga-da-blugga-da-blugga-das, the Tony Williams thing. They'll just come out. And it comes out at the strangest time. So I think all the years of practicing all those rudiments, the Swiss triplet thing, and a lot of there's some other rudiments. There's 53 rudiments, I believe, and there's a lot of Swiss rudiments. And some of those things just come out when you're playing and you don't even know where they come from because you worked on them for so long. But one of my favorite rudiments, besides paradiddles and long rolls, is probably Rudiment. Blubba-da-bump, blubba-da-bump, blubba-da-bump. And I mean, a lot of the Gaddisms that I play are based on that rudiment. He loved to open up the Rudiment. That was one of the things he did a lot of. So, good morning, Drumman19. Nice to see you today. And Tim Bragg is here. All right, let's see what Tim said. Any recommendations for a good value quality snare stand? Here's what I'm into for stands these days. I use the Tama Classic hardware for all my gigs. Now, I am 60 years old. I do not want to carry big, heavy stands anymore. Well, the Tama Classic hardware's got a snare stand in there. It is excellent. It's got more of a tripod than a flat, so you can actually fit it in your kit easier. That's the way they designed it. So it's got a little bit of a tripod to it. You're not going to get it flat, and it really holds the drum really well. And I think it's like $59 by themselves. The hi-hat stand is amazing for the money. I mean, I bought the whole package. So I got 2 cymbal stands, a hi-hat, and a snare stand. And then I went back and bought a tom stand and an extra flat snare cymbal stand. And I use them all the time. I love that hardware. And I mean, if you're gigging and if you're just gigging and you don't want to break your back, I mean, 21 pounds my bag weighs. I can pick it up with my hand still. So that's a big part of what I do and why I do it. So, but yeah, I would say that's a good one for snare stand. Most of my snare stands in here are so old, I can't really give credit to them. I got an old Ludwig in here. I've got a couple Pearl stands that I bought so long ago. I don't even know what series they are anymore, but they're those standard basket snare stands. I don't have any DW stuff really. I've got one DW arm that somebody gave me, but that's about it. Most of my stands are all pieced together from years of playing and hardware that broke and I found and acquired and blah, 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 all that good stuff. The only new hardware I have is that Tama stuff, and that Tama stuff is excellent for the local gigging thing. If I was doing a road gig, no, that probably wouldn't be the hardware I would use, but I'm not doing any road gigs. That ain't happening. So I know you're talking about those days anymore. Heritage Brush. Let's see. Drumman 190 had a question. What's your favorite thing about making covers? That's a good question, Matthew. I was talking to my wife this morning about the challenges of life and what makes us who we are. And after you're here about 60 years, you kind of figured out how you got to where you got in some respects. You still have a long way to go, but you kind of start to figure out. I'm somebody that was, when I was in college, I was not the top drummer in the school. I wasn't even close to being the top drummer. Matter of fact, I got accepted to music school. I was going through the story with my wife this morning. When I got accepted to music school, I barely made the audition. I memorized the snare piece out of the Nard solo book, and I memorized the figure 1 and 2 and backwards. I was playing 1 and a 2 and a. And the guy knew I memorized. He said, "You memorized that, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you memorized the part wrong." But he saw something in my playing. He said, "I'm going to bring you in because you're musical. So I see something in your playing. So I'm going to bring you into school." So he brought me in. He said, "But you got to practice all summer." He told me what to practice. And I worked all summer to pay for college. And I did practice some because I was working in a parking lot collecting money on the Jersey Shore, on the boardwalk in Long Branch when there was a boardwalk there and it wasn't the pier that it is today. And the funny thing was I would practice while I was collecting money and stuff, but I didn't practice the way I needed to practice. And when I got to school, my reading was terrible. And all my classmates were in the Cerrone book, the Anthony Cerrone book. And I got to my first lesson with my teacher's name was Nick Serrato. He was a Broadway percussionist and conductor on Broadway. And he looked at me, he said, "No, this isn't working." And he basically said, "Get the Podemsky book," which was the drum methods book for drum methods for all the teachers. And when you took drum methods, you started in Podemsky. And I went to page 1 on the Podemsky book, pretty much half notes and whole notes. And that's where I started my college snare drum career. So I was pretty terrible. My reading was pretty bad. And there wasn't a lot there except for I had an ear. And he understood I was playing by ear and I heard things. So to go back to the question, am I on the drum question? Yeah, I'm still on the drum question. So when it comes to drum covers, for me, it's getting through the songs and getting through them where I stylistically play it as best I can. And I sometimes will challenge myself with songs where I'm not, it may be slightly out of my league, my playing ability to play what the drummer played on it, but I'm going to put what I am into it and bring what I am to the table and adapt the song so I can get through it. And that's been my career in music. It's been basically adapting every group I'm with, the music I'm playing, to what I'm able to play, to my skill level. And it surprises me sometimes that I have more skills than I think some days. I have more chops than I think some days. But I never had the ability to just sit and practice and practice and practice. Like I had my friend Pat O'Donnell. I'm going to get him on one of these days. Pat would practice 8 hours a day in college. And like I said, when you're in college, that's the time to do it. Do it as much as you can possibly get away with. When you're living under mom and dad's roof, do it all summer if you can get away with it, you know? But the truth is there comes a day where life changes, kids, jobs, work, playing gigs, and you eventually get to the point where practice becomes harder. When it comes to drum covers, the reason why I do drum covers is because I'm trying to challenge myself to play better and play as well as the guys that played on those records, because those records did something to inspire me. So that's why I do drum covers. I do drum covers to basically play the things I always wanted to play as a kid and as a young adult and what I was listening to. And it's what inspires me. So you'll see me try things that are a little bit outside my league once in a while just for the heck of it. And sometimes I'm playing stuff that's very much in my pocket, but I'm adapting it to my way. And that's where I don't get stuck on being exact, but I want to be close. So Tate Berkey said, "Have you ever checked out the Root 505s from Vic Firth?" Yes, I have. They have a plastic and they have an interesting feel, but I love playing with them. They'll never break. Weckl plays them a lot. You know, I had a pair of the Roots, but I think I had the early Roots, the ones with the wood. I didn't have the plastic ones. So the 505s are the plastic ones. Um, who was it? Tommy Igo was using those. Um, they're very similar to the Blastics. I'm a big fan of the Regal Blastics because when the nastier they get, the older they get, the better they feel because they get that kind of nastiness to the plastic and it starts to like fray a little bit. And they actually sound better the older they get. I have a couple pairs of Blastics that I rotate in and out of things. So I'm more of a Blastic guy. I've been playing them since they came out too. They came out before the Roots. But I heard that about the Roots. They do the same thing. That's a great point. Lori Jones, you have to explain how you got the nickname the Hammer. I've done this a few times. Let me take a sip of coffee for that one. All right. The Hammer name came in 1988. I was in a band called Saved by Grace who went to Nashville, did an album. When I got home from Nashville doing that album, the big snare drum of the year in the late 80s was the piccolo snare drum. And matter of fact, if you can find a 80s version of a Pearl free floating brass piccolo, or especially the Yamaha one, the one that Weckel played in all those ads, and Vinny played in those ads, and everybody sees those with the little squared lugs pre the Maple Customs, but that was the lug that design that they were going for eventually. Piccolos was the sound. And I've talked about this story in a different way in that the day I found my piccolo snare drum was also the day that I played a brass superphonic in New York City from the 50s that was used, cost about the same amount of money, $300 for the piccolo or the brass superphonic. I should have bought the brass superphonic, to be honest, because I don't have that piccolo anymore. But I bought that piccolo and I brought it to band rehearsal and I had it cranked up and I started hammering it through this lead singer's head. And he turned around and goes, "I'm going to call you the Hammer because you're giving my ears I'm bleeding in the ears right now because of that snare drum." And that's where it kind of started. That was the starting point. It was 1988. The singer's name was Russ Scalzo, was leader of Saved by Grace, and he nicknamed me the Hammer, and it kind of stuck because the next band I was in, they called me the Hammer, and every show I was called the Hammer. We played a lot of clubs, and we played Creation Festival and stuff, and I was named the Hammer there, in 1990. So I played some pretty big shows with the other band, and for the time, and that's where the name stuck, and I just kept it. But I've had guys call me out on YouTube basically saying that's a little pretentious to use that, call yourself the Hammer. Like, how dare you do that? But I would never do that for myself. It was something that somebody gave me. But it sure does work here on YouTube. With, it kind of makes the show work, hanging with the Hammer. So let's see where I'm at. Don't want to miss any questions. I was in a live stream with this guy, Tim Metz. I don't know if any of you guys know Tim. Great jazz player. I asked him some crazy question about his drums, and all the other guys were asking questions about like 3 against 2 and the syncopation and the stuff he was playing, And I asked him some other strange question about drums, and he just skipped over my question. That pissed me off. So I'm gonna try not to skip over anybody's questions today. Tama makes great hardware. Does it go high enough? Yeah, the Tama hardware does go high enough. High enough for me. I mean, I'm not playing Carmen Appice Chinas anymore. I mean, those days. I mean, I just did a Maynard Ferguson cover of Theme from Rocky, and I had a China over here where the camera is actually, and it was up really high, like the 70s. But I normally don't play my Chinas high anymore. I usually play them down low, more like the Swish Knocker thing that Erskine does. I actually like the Paiste 18-inch China to be kind of low and regular, not flipped over. But I had it flipped over on this one. It kind of worked. Let's see. Next question. Jim Flies too. Most of my jazz gigs, I just carry old Ludwig flat bass. Hi-hat throne is and the throne is heavier. Yeah, I carry my throne, the best throne I have. That's really important, Jim. I've used the Ludwig flat bass hardware. Matter of fact, I have one of them up here. I have a splash cymbal over here that you can't see on a flat bass old Ludwig. They're exactly the same. This Tama Classic is copying the flat bass Ludwig to the T. The only difference is it doesn't make the noise of the flat bass Ludwig. And I had a cowbell on this thing and on this Ludwig over here, and it was clicking every time I hit the cowbell. I was playing it this week, and I was going, crud, what's that sound? And what it is the metal rod of the top was kind of clicking against the second section, and Tama got rid of all the clicks. It's smooth, it's clean, you don't have to over tighten it. The teeth are really good. Everything about it is just better than the Ludwig. It's just I played those Ludwig flats for a long time. My first kid had Ludwig flats. I still have some of those stands. That's what my stands are from. That and Michael Perry gave me. He sent me a couple of his broken pieces, and I pieced another stand together. So I have a set of Ludwig flats, and I have a Ludwig hi-hat, but they just don't feel like the Tama. The Tama's new, and it feels nice. So I would recommend you try it out if you can spare $300. It's like less than $300 it cost me. I thought it was really worthwhile. Hey Claus, hey Alexandro. Hello Alexandro, thanks for dropping in today. Drumman 190, what am I practicing right now? Not practicing anything. I'm actually trying to figure out I'm going to be working on a new song for Sean Woodley, who's taking lessons from me now via Skype. So I do Skype lessons. And there's a song he sent me that he wants to learn. So today I'm going to be working on a drum cover for that, but I haven't practiced it. The way I do drum covers is I basically turn the cameras on, set it up in the DAW, and I play along with the track with the drums in for a while. Then I eventually take the drums out usually, and then I just go. And if that takes me 30 minutes, it's 30 minutes. If it takes me an hour, it's an hour. Last week, I spent an hour and a half on a song. That was the Michael W. Smith song, Strong and Courageous. Believe it or not, that took me an hour and a half, and the best take that I did, the second camera died. So I was really teed. So I had to go to the take before that where I had most of the second camera, and that's what I posted this week. And it was pretty good, but that for some reason, the amount of hits and that was a song where if it was written out for me, I probably would have done it in a half hour. But rather than sit there and transcribe and try to figure that out, I just do it by ear over and over again until I get all the hits. And there was a lot of hits in that song. So that's where learning your transcription skills in college really helps. Because if you can write a quick chart and get all the hits in there quickly, that roadmap will get me through a gig. I do that for church. I'll just roadmap certain things I need to play, and I'll just put certain grooves on this. Most of you any that play in church know that you kind of get a lead sheet, which is basically chords and lyrics. And all I'll do is write the basic grooves alongside of them and the form up in the top, maybe verse, chorus, bridge. And then I'll do little symbols on my charts, like an arrow down will mean down verse, meaning don't play or just play overheads, just play cymbals and stuff. So I have my own sketchy way of writing a chart for myself. But sometimes having the chart makes playing the drum cover a lot easier for me. I did that with Living Colors, Cult of Personality. I did that last year. I got the chart offline, and that made it so much easier to play. Because once I could see where the 3/4 bars laid the way they did, I kind of figured it out, and it made it come together. So, but most of my songs don't do that. I just turn it on, put it in the headphones, start playing, and figure the grooves out and figure the hits out and go with it. And a lot of the songs are stuff I kind of been listening to forever. All right, Martin is going to ask a question. Martin said, "This is probably a bit out of the ordinary, but are you into headphones? Am I into headphones?" Well, I'm into headphones because I had a studio for a long time. I've had all kinds of headphones, from studio monitors like the Sennheisers, the HD 285s, which I got a pair of over here. I didn't know if I was going to need them today. I've got the Beyerdynamic. I think they're the M77s or the M88s. I can't remember which. I've used all the drum headphones, the Vic Firths. I haven't used the second version of the Vic Firth, but I used the first version, which was terrible. There's a guy named Gordy Knudsen from Minnesota that makes headphones, Superphones. Those are probably the best drummer headphones out there, from what I can tell. I've never had the real good ones. I had the lower line. They worked for about 10 years, and then they broke. I had the Metrophones. I've had 2 pairs of those. I've had the drum phones, the isolation headphones. I've had a pair of those. They broke. All my drum isolation headphones broke at some point. None of them are still good. They're like halfway there. But I use a set of 1964 in-ear monitors, which are custom molds for my ears. And I bought them in 2013 when I was playing at a church, right before we did the album. We did a live album, Daniel McManus Live. It's on YouTube, Daniel McManus Live, and I actually have some clips of me playing along that sync up with the track. They didn't do a lot of editing on the drums. There was really very little editing on the drums. So thank you, Greg Peterson. Yes, it's G&K Ultraphones. That's what they're called. Gordy Knudsen. That's what G&K is. So let's see. Keith Scott at Claus. Yeah, Cult of Personality was awesome. His drum sounded huge. Thank you. Let's see what else. Let's go back. I missed a few here. So does that answer your question, Martin? I think it did. You know, I like headphones. I'm not one of those Beats guys, though. I don't have any of those. I'm not going to spend $300 for a set of Beats. I someday might spend a couple $100 for a good set of those Superphones or Ultraphones from GK. But at this point in time, I don't see the need to. I've got all kinds of The other thing you learn having a studio, and I've done, like, this is a working studio. I've done albums down here. I did an album project last year down here where I had singers all over the place and musicians all over the place. And I'm running headphone lines everywhere. It's a small space, and we were recording in the normal way you record today, one person at a time, pretty much. Very rarely was it two. Like, we did a bass and drum thing once, I think, in the whole thing with a scratch guitar. But when you have headphones running all over the place with singers and people just put them on the floor and they step on them and break them and stuff, I just tape stuff up. I've got headphones with tape all over them. Matter of fact, don't spill over there. Where are you? Oh, I guess I put them back. The other headphones. Yeah, I did. I thought I still had the Sennheisers over there. I don't. But my Sennheisers got like tape all over the headband and stuff because I got to tape them together. I mean, people break stuff so easily when it's not there, so they just throw it anywhere. So I've learned that about having a studio too. That's another aspect of it. So let's see what else we got here. Tim said, I just picked up a brass Mapex piccolo snare. Cool. Nice find. Hopefully you got a good deal on that. Lloyd Jones, used the Tama hardware on the pub gigs. They are stable enough and are light. Thank you for agreeing with me. Favorite effects cymbal or China? Well, I'd say my favorite China right now is the 18-inch 2002 China, but before that, my favorite China was the Peisty Signature 16-inch thin China until I cracked it. I cracked it after almost 30 years of playing it. The problem with the Peisty Signature alloy, like I've said many times, is that it bends and it dents, and that thing was bent all up. I used to bash the crap out of that cymbal. That was my it was so pretty too. I will say that it was the prettiest China I ever had. It just would go shh. And I remember the day I picked it out, because I picked it out in Sam Ash in Edison, New Jersey. It was about 1990. My wife was with me. I was playing Sabian at the time, so I had all Sabian. And I was looking at a Sabian Carmen Appice nickel China. And this thing sounded terrible. I don't know if you've ever heard nickel cymbals. These cymbals sounded disgusting. But it was the coolest Sabian in the place. And I hit it. I go, it's like worse than a Wuhan. And Wuhans are pretty bad sometimes. And my wife said, don't get that cymbal. And she walked over and she hit the other China, which was that Peisty was sitting right next to it. And she hit it and she goes, this is the one you want. And she picked it out for me. And so that 16-inch thin China was my wife's pick. And I brought it home and I played it for 30 years. And now it's cracked and I pull it out every once in a while. It's got a couple rivets in it to give it some sustain. So it just doesn't sound as good. But the 18-inch China, 2002 is one of my favorites. I also have a Swish Knocker from the 1970s with 20 rivets in it, a la Peter Erskine. That's a really beautiful cymbal. I only pull it out for certain things. And I have a Tosco by Sabian, 18-inch thin china that sounds great. I got it for $50. So the funny thing about effects China cymbals is you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a good sounding cymbal. Matter of fact, I've got a 20-inch Wuhan that sounds cool too, but it's really a 70s Wuhan. Wuhans are hit or miss, man. They got that Wuhan sound, but they crack. I've cracked 3 Wuhans in my life. So actually, I didn't crack the 12. I didn't crack the 14. My son's friend cracked the 14. They were in band practice, it was a screamo band, and he cracked the 14. But I broke a 16 on a gig. I broke the 12-inch. My friend Scott gave me that 12-inch Wuhan I have. But now my grandson, Elliot, has on his kit. So I gave it to him. And he beat the crap out. I had to tape it up to put it on his kit because it was driving his parents crazy. So that's kind of funny. That's a funny story right there. Let's see what else we got. Back Claus, Cult of Personality, great. Jim Flies too. Did a lesson with Gordy Knudsen back in 1986. Fantastic teacher, amazing drummer. Check him out. Still have a video of that lesson. That's great, Jim. That is awesome. You took a lesson with Gordy. Yeah, Gordy played with Steve Miller Band for a long, long time. I mean, I think Gordy's a great player. Excellent player. And he makes great headphones too. So excellent headphones. Tate, do you ever get questions from people asking for drum charts, transcriptions of songs that you've covered? I always get emails from people asking, and I always have to explain I do everything by ear. I'm in the same boat. I do get people that ask me to write if I've written out a chart. For some reason, they think writing out a chart that you have to read music to play drum covers. I don't know why that's the case, but I think a lot of people learn by reading music. So that's a very common question. I get that a lot on a lot of my covers. That's way too common today. Especially if you play it well, I think they really want to know, well, what are you reading? Where are you And the truth of the matter is what comes out of me is usually coming out of my head. That's where it's coming from. It's something I'm feeling. And you can actually see it in my playing sometimes. You can see me changing direction. Like I'll do something weird. Something will come out sideways, but they'll end up being like a cool fill or something. And it all happened because I heard something happened in the track and I reacted to it. That's what I call playing music, by the way. And even if you are reading a chart, you have to be able to interpret what's going on with the musicians you're playing with. That's a big topic of mine, as you all know. And Tate also asked the question, I want to get whatever those headphones are that Danny used back in the day live. You mean the single ear ones? Danny had a set of single. Danny Seraphin had, I believe Radio Shack used to make that headphone that Danny Seraphin played, because I had one that looked exactly like Danny's. I had a set of Radio Shacks, and you used to be able to buy a Radio Shack for like $7 in the 70s. And I took the ear off. I took the ear off and I put a piece of tape around it. Was using it on one side for live gigs because I was trying to find a way to monitor. Even in the 70s, I was trying to find a way to use headphones to monitor versus using the wedge monitors. And I did do it for one gig. I used something that was kind of like Danny, but it didn't sound anything like it. Danny used to run a whole huge 24-channel mixing board right alongside his drum kit. Him and Nigel Olson both were big on having their own mixing board and headphones alongside their drum kit, as was Dave Weckl. Dave Weckl wasn't first. Danny Seraphin was doing that back in the 70s. When I saw him live in 77, he had a complete mixing board, which was huge, by the way. A 24-channel mixing board back in the 70s had these huge knobs on it and faders. So it was a studio board, basically, that he carried along with him to take all the different mics were split off into his board, and he gave himself a custom mix. So by 77, he was using double-eared headphones, but in the early 70s, he was using a single-eared headphone. So it's kind of interesting. And the evolution of PA systems from the Beatles to now is just incredibly, you can't believe it. When the Beatles played the Hollywood Bowl in 1966, they were using Shure Vocal Master PA. I mean, even Elvis was using a Shure Vocal Master PA in the early 70s in Vegas. I mean, Shure Vocal Master PA was basically a column, these columns, and the board was like, forget about it. It wasn't anything like we know a board to be today. And it was crazy. So we've seen PAs go from being pretty much, the Beatles couldn't hear themselves at all, to now bands having in-ear monitors, they can hear every single thing that's going on. So it's so much cooler to play today. I mean, playing in church today has got to be one of the best experiences ever if you're in one of these churches with Avion systems and you can dial in your mix. I remember I was playing a church gig once and the bass player couldn't get the changes right. He didn't copy the charts. He didn't bring the charts into the gig. He had like the chord sheets, but he didn't have the charts. And we were reading charts on this gig with a click. And the bass player was all over the place. And we actually had the MD in our ears screaming the changes out through the whole worship set. It was terrible. But I took the bass player. He was so off, I turned him off. I said, I'm not listening to this. You know, I don't have to hear him. All I needed to hear was the click and know where the chords were going and listen to what was going on. So it changed everything. I mean, today you play in church. That's why using in-ears is really kind of cool. And plus, usually drummers are in the penalty box anyhow. I call it the penalty box, in that cage that you can't hear out of. You know, you can't hear anything going on. So, but yes, in-ears are extremely liberating. So let me see. I missed a couple comments. Let's go back a little bit. Let's see, Gordy. Transcriptions, headphones. Yes, I love the Danny headphones. Martin asked another question. I also have a pair of Beyerdynamics 990 Pros. Those are nice. Yeah. Oh, and you got some real designer ones. What do they call them? Kill pitch. I can't even say that. I know that's a fancy receiver for a good audio system. Let's see, Chadwick Perry. And now we do it all through Bluetooth with our iPhones. Stage mixing. You're right. That's where it's gotten to. If you've got the right setup, you know, the right digital mixer, you can do it all with all your iPhones and Bluetooth headphones. That's crazy, isn't it? In-ears are extremely liberating. Yes, Tate. We used to call them Shure Vocal Smashers. That's right. That's what they were, Shure Vocal Smashers. Great. Any other questions? I think I went pretty good on the headphone thing for a while there. So anybody else got any more questions? Don't know what else to say about that. Definitely appreciate all the questions. I appreciate you all being there. Thank you having 14 people out there. I mean, and all my friends showing up today. I do appreciate it. I really screwed up the beginning of this. It was listed at 9 p.m. You will never find me on YouTube at 9 p.m. I will not be there. I'll be sitting in my big reclining chair next to my wife, probably going. That's usually what I start to do around 9 o'clock. So you will not see me doing it. I am definitely not a musician anymore, because a real musician can last till 1 a.m. like Chadwick Perry can, out in the clubs. That's a tough gig, man. I did years of that stuff, and I do not miss that anymore. But there's something happens when you hit 50. It just starts to change. Your life, you know, like bedtime becomes more important. I was just listening to Steve Lukather on an interview. I think it was for Rock History Music. I don't know if you guys follow that channel, but Steve Lukather was talking, and he was talking about going to bed at 8:30 at night. He's like 64, I guess, I think now, and that just cracked me up. It was like, yeah, I can really identify with going to bed at 8:30 at night and waking up at 4 a.m. That's my other thing. I wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So most of the time when I post my videos, I actually post them somewhere between 4 and 5 in the morning. It's me posting it. I rarely premiere anything, and I rarely schedule anything. I usually just post videos when I get up and when I want to do it, and I make that decision right then and there. So, thanks, Drum Covers by Bill. Thanks for being here. Lori Jones says, "Can you recommend a set of in-ear monitors?" Yeah, sure. First off, I tried the Shure in-ear monitors with the little foam. I did not like it. Actually, I'll step that back. The first time I used in-ear monitors was 2001. And it was when I moved down here to Florida, in a church down here in Florida. and the guy gave me his in-ear monitors with the little yellow, really hard yellow foam. And it was the early versions of Shure monitors. And they were really good. They worked actually really well. But then when I was playing at this church in 2012, they had the cheap Shure in-ear monitors with the foam. And they didn't isolate the drums enough for me. And the drums didn't sound good in them. So I didn't enjoy them. So I went out and went to an audiologist and got my ears molded, and then I sent them off to 1964 Ears, which is now called 64 Ears. But there's a bazillion in-ear companies out there. Westone, Ultimate Ears, 64 Ears. But I will tell you that the molded ears are going to fit you better than the foam. You may have, some guys love the foam. I have a friend that uses the foam all the time. That's the only thing he wants to use. And you probably want to get as a drummer something with triple drivers so that you can actually get hear the bass well enough. That's the other thing. Making sure you have monitors so you get enough bass response. That's the only thing I would say. My 1964 Ears are pretty old. They don't make them anymore, and they're triple drivers, but they sound great, and I use them all the time now because I'm not playing in a church where I need in-ears. I actually play in a live room in a Presbyterian church, right on the floor in front of the altar kind of thing. And it's a live room and there's no mics. So it's like playing a jazz gig, really, my church service now. It's not like playing the big stadium rock gig I used to play. So I've done that for years. Isn't an app for mixing sound in church? I think the app that Chad was talking about would go with your like Behringer digital board or your Presonus digital board. There's actually apps to go with your iPhone, and then you put your in-ears into it, and then you can mix your monitor mix, so you get what you want in your monitors. Sean, thanks, Matthew, for being on the show, being here, asking questions, appreciate it. Tim Bragg's going, I'm still going to bed at 2 or 3 a.m. Sorry about that, Tim. Yeet Feet, good morning. Good morning. Carlisle Sauls, thank you. Great. Chadwick says, really get molds. It's so important. I'm using JH Audio 4 drivers, but no mid driver. Drum and bass setup. Excellent. I've never used JH Audio, but I've heard of them. That's a good one. And I agree. The molds make all the difference, to be honest. Just take care of them. That's the hardest thing. You got to take care of these things because they cost so much stinking money. I bought 2 sets of cables, and I've already replaced it once. So, and I was glad I kept the replacement cable with me because it happened at a church service. And you know why I broke it? Was because I put it back in the case the wrong way, rushing after service to get out of there. And I kind of clipped it and popped off. So I had to basically change the cables. But the cables, that's usually what goes first, is the cables. Any other questions, guys? Trying to see if I missed anything. Thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate you guys showing up. Even though I really messed up the time on this thing. So, but like I said, Saturday mornings is what I'm shooting to do it at. I am going to bring some more guests on. I think the guest thing really was fun last week. I had a lot of fun with Chad and Tate. Promised to bring Tate back to talk about Just Chicago one show. I'm going to try to bring some of my other friends in that have been players professionally, so you guys can hear from some of them. But yeah, I really do appreciate you all being here and asking questions. I just got another question. It says, this is from Michael Stewart. He says, love your Barry Manilow songs. Are you doing any new ones? You know, I love Barry Manilow. That's another crazy thing, okay? For a drummer to admit they love Barry Manilow is probably really weird, I know. But I grew up, my first albums were the albums in my house. I think when we start playing drums, the first things we play to are the things we can get our hands on. Now, my sister had a couple albums. She had Elton John's Greatest Hits, which I was not allowed to touch, unfortunately. But she had, it was my sister or my mother, had a Barry Manilow album, Trying to Get the Feeling Again. And it just, that's where I learned how to play ballad drums. I love playing ballad drums with big toms, fills, you know, blah, 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 doo, 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 bah. I love that stuff. That whole Barry Manilow album had that kind of stuff going on. I write the songs and make the whole. So yeah, I'll probably do some more Barry Manilow. If somebody wants to hear Barry Manilow, I love Barry Manilow. So it's like one of those, what do they call them? Those guilty pleasures. Barry Manilow is a guilty pleasure for a drummer. I can tell you that right now. So yeah, I'll do another Barry Manilow. Thanks for the info on the molds. I don't have in-ears or isolation headphones. I will say this about headphones. One other thing. It's very important you get closed back headphones if you're going to use them in a kind of studio environment. They got to go over your ear and be closed in. Otherwise, if it's bleeding out, the click will be all over the place. And most drummers got to play with the click so stinking loud to stay with it. It's not even funny. Of course, as you become more confident with the click, you'll end up blending the click in a little bit differently. That's just something you start to learn, especially if you're playing with live musicians together. The click becomes less relevant. But when you're playing on somebody's track and all you've got is a scratch and a click and the scratch is a little out of it, they want you to be totally with the click, even though they played all their stuff away from, back and forth on the click. So I've learned you just pop the click and pull the guitar back and play your part. Let's see. Thanks for the info on the molds. Thanks, Lori Jones. Thank you. Sean Woodley, here. Same here. I find myself listening to a lot of songs I grew up with more now than ever. Well, guys, thank you all for being on. Any other questions? I may pop this one at 10 o'clock just to be faithful to keeping it an hour and something I can replay for everybody. I know people don't normally go an hour and a half. We did that last time. But any other questions, guys? Thank you all for being on the show today. I really appreciate all the questions. I will rebroadcast so others will get to watch it. And those of you that jumped on late will get to see the beginning. The first 3 minutes for me just going, is anybody going to come? I set it up the wrong way. So, Claus, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Eat Feet, I grew up on Metallica. Yeah, you probably won't hear me playing Metallica, but I did play that one Metallica song. There's one Metallica song in my playlist. Go find it. I forget what it was called. It's the one with, what is it? What's that name of that song? I'm not a Metallica guy. Cheers, Tim. All right, guys. Thank you all for being on today. Thank you, Tate and Chad and Lori and Michael Stewart and Claus and Tim Bragg and Sean and everybody. Thank you all for being on my show today. Remember, your questions make the show, and your questions made this show. Thank you so much for being on today. Everybody, have a great day. See ya.